This week, I'm excited to be collaborating with f-stop. In a second, I'll be sharing 3 of my favorite image developing tips. We're also going to be giving away some cool stuff, including a Lotus pack, like this one of my Photoshop courses, and one of my signed fine art prints. So make sure to check out the link and enter. Now, over to the computer for some tips. My first tip is for using Lightroom to establish the white balance foundation you want in your image. Often, one of the preset white balances will be just what you want. But if you're not sure, this technique can make it easier to visualize how the colors are balanced. First, set the vibrance up to 100 to really make the colors obvious. Now adjust temperature for the blue-yellow balance you want, and then adjust the tint to get the green-magenta balance you want. Follow up with hue adjustments in the HSL tab to fine-tune each color and get them to blend smoothly. Now bring the vibrance back down to your desired color level. Pumping up the colors like that allows me to see and correct color balance issues that I wouldn't see otherwise. This next tip is for separately controlling the colors in your highlights and shadows of an image. This is often called split toning. It works best with images that are already somewhat two-tone with warm highlights and cool shadows, like this one. So the first thing you do is create a lights luminosity mask on a color balance adjustment layer. I personally use the TK panel to generate luminosity masks, but you can use whatever luminosity mask generation technique you like. So now I'm going to increase the yellows, reds, and magentas in both the midtones and the highlights. The luminosity mask helps constrain these adjustments just to the highlights even more. Second, I'm going to create a darks luminosity mask on a second color balance adjustment layer. Now I'm going to work with the blues, cyans, and magentas in the midtones only until I get the shadow colors that I want. The darks luminosity mask constrains this adjustment to the shadows. The color adjustments you make to both the highlights and the shadows will be different image to image, and this technique really only looks good on certain images, but when it works, it can really have a great effect. My third and final tip is for enhancing image depth. I call it vignetting and spotlighting. All you're really doing is darkening the edges and highlighting the center of the frame. There are tools in the TK panel that make this even faster, but I'll show it using the standard Photoshop method. First, grab the lasso tool and draw a selection around the outside of the image. Now, create a brightness contrast layer with that selection as the mask. Next, invert the mask using Ctrl or Command I, and then set the multiply blending mode to darken. Now go to Filter, Blur, Gaussian Blur, and blur or feather the mask. Adjust the layer opacity, and finally, if you need to, you can adjust the brightness and the contrast. So there's the vignetting or the edge darkening. Next, we need to lighten or spotlight the center. So draw a new lasso selection, or selections if you want to highlight multiple areas, somewhere in the center of the image. Create another brightness contrast layer with that selection as the mask, and then set the blending mode of this layer to screen to lighten. Again, Gaussian blur the mask, adjust the layer opacity, adjust the brightness and contrast of the layer if you need to, and then finally select both of those layers and place them in a group. It seems simple, but slightly darkening the edges and slightly lightening the center of an image really makes it feel deeper and more dimensional. Thanks for tuning in. I hope you can put those 3 quick developing tips to use in your work. And don't forget to go to the link for your chance at getting the Lotus camera bag bundle from f-stop, one of my image developing courses, and one of my signed prints.